Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. You doing well? Good. There's booze. It's good. I'm Roland Cozzolino. I'm the CTO of MediaMath. MediaMath and OmniTI in this Surge event. I want to invite you here to the lightning rounds. We're going to go over about, today I think we've added a sixth talk. They're 5 minutes each. I get to gong them at 5 minutes, which is always fun. After each talk, I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to fire questions in case you have any. As you saw the signs outside, obviously we're hiring. I think every company in here is hiring. I was told to say that. So the first person I'm going to have up here today is Baron Schwartz. Baron is actually going to talk about how to tune a guitar by ear. Baron, come on up. Awesome. All right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, sir.
Hey everyone. I'm going to blow through some slides real quick. The first thing about tuning any musical instrument is you don't listen to pitch. I'll explain why. It's all about physics and math and a couple of things that are coincidental but not exactly the same in music. So here's a sine wave and here's another sine wave and they're not the same. And when you add them together, you get this. And so what you're listening for when you tune is you should be listening for beats, the fluctuation in the intensity of the sound. That's how your ear hears things that are close to the same frequency, kind of like a wow, wow, wow sort of a sound. And that's what tuning by ear is all about. You literally ignore the pitch. So now let's talk about the math and the physics behind it. So in our Western music, we have a well-tempered scale, evenly tempered scale, which means that every octave doubles in pitch, doubles in frequency. And it's divided into 12 steps, each of which is evenly spaced, which means that it's logarithmic. So I've got the standard A440 and the octave below that here. I'm going to start expanding this a little bit. The notes are not pure sine waves. There are very few things that are pure sine waves. A tuning fork is somewhat close to a pure sine wave. They have overtones, which you might call harmonics. Typically, they're called partials. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there that I won't have time for. Simple relationships between these notes, between frequencies, sound good to our ears because the partials, which are multiples of the fundamental frequency, are close together. So for example, there's an interval called a fifth, which is distance of 5 notes apart from each other, a major fifth. And that's a multiplication of approximately 1.5 in frequency. It's not exactly, so I've added another column here where you can see, for example, the fifth from A to E. Theoretically, if A is 220, E would be 330, but it's not. Due to the difference between this, the math of how strings and partials work and the math of these 12th roots of 2 that are the intervals between notes, you actually, in the evenly tempered scale, E is 329.63 hertz and not 330 hertz, so there's a slight difference there. You can see that's a negative difference. A fifth is a narrow interval. It's slightly flat from the pure interval. And thirds and fourths are slightly wide. And so what you end up getting is these differences in the partials between 2 notes, and you can hear the beats in those things. So if we start at A220 and we tune an octave is the columns that I'm showing here are octaves, the third partial, fourth partial, and the fifth partial, and those are all multiples of the fundamental frequency. So if we tune from A to E as a fifth interval, what you'll get is you'll get the 2 yellow cells there, the 660, that's 660 hertz is the note that the third partial of the A is going to sound, and then the E is going to have a note at an octave of 659.26 hertz. And so you get these beats in the partials. It's pretty slow in the fifths and the fourths, but it's pretty dramatic in the thirds. And the idea of tuning these things so that there are beats in them and that the partials are not completely aligned is, first of all, if you completely tune things to pure intervals, then you're basically going to have some intervals that'll sound really bad. So you're pretty much trying to make everything sound equally bad. The other thing is that pure intervals actually tend to sound a little bit more dead, and you don't really realize it unless you're used to hearing this. But intervals that are tuned in equal temperament sound lively and interesting to our ears. So this is a tuning scheme for what you can do with the strings of the guitar, and I'll just quickly demo. So the way this guitar is tuned right now probably sounds reasonable to some of you, but if you play a couple of different chords, I'm not sure if this is going to pick up very well. If you play a couple of different chords, you'll notice that some notes just sound really bad. And so what musicians do, they get on stage and they'll be doing like, they're listening to the pitch and it's not quite right, and it's like, crap, you know. Right, so they spend 5 minutes like telling childhood stories and whatever, and I've just detuned this guitar. And what they're really doing is like showing that they don't know how to tune their own instrument, of course. And it's hard in a noisy place, but here's how I do it. I start with a tuning fork. I'm going to put it between my teeth, and that way it'll vibrate in my skull and I can hear it. And what I'm hearing in my head is beating against the overtone here. I'm not listening to the pitch. I'm only listening to the beats. And this guitar has gone way out of tune. 2/3 of a beat wide. I don't know how easy it is to hear, but I'm listening to the beats in those notes. Slightly wide. 1/3 is actually quite wide. 7 3/4 beats wide. You have to be able to hear and count. And there we go. Was that my 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's 5 minutes.
Okay.
You guys want to fire any questions? I mean, I want to know the statement. You're trying to make it sound as, what was this, as bad, equally? Is that what I'm, yeah, equally bad.
Yep. A beat is that wow, 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 wow sound as the frequencies cancel and reinforce each other. So you're listening to that fluctuation in the intensity of the sound. No more? All right, I'm out of here.
I got one right here. Do you think digital tuners do as good a job as you could use for your...
Loaded question. I didn't give anybody any references for, I should have put a link on here to a blog post where I go into like a 30-page exposition about all the realities of how tuning really works, because the partials in stringed instruments, partials in wind instruments are multiples of the fundamental frequency. Partials in stringed instruments, because of the stiffness of the string and other factors, are slightly different from pure multiples. So instead of an A220 having an A440 partial, it'll be like 440.05 or something like that, slightly stretched upwards. And digital tuners tend to not do a good job at adjusting things. For somebody who has a really ear for it, digital tuners tend to make things sound almost, but not really, how they want to be tuned kind of naturally, because nothing's perfect in the real world. Yeah. Yeah.
If you have to play with people that are tuning the other way,
If you have to play with a bunch of people, I mean, basically everybody's instruments are badly tuned anyway, so whatever, have fun. I mean, this is cool because it's math and it's physics and all that stuff, and also because there's a real skill and something that needs to be developed in your ear. Like when you start doing this, you'll be able to listen to beats and hear those partials for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And your ear will physically get tired. Some people's ears start to clench and spasm. And when it's noisy like it is here now, I mean, it was hard for me to hear the beats. Whatever, I mean, this is cool, but the main thing I think is to understand why, if you take some of the advice about how to tune an instrument, like you should tune by making the harmonics match and then it sounds like crap and you don't know why. and you're like, well, what should I adjust? Is this one too high or is that one too low or whatever? This gives you a kind of a framework for understanding all of that, I think.
Awesome. Give a big round of applause, please, to Baron. I'm going to bring up the next person. Baron, thank you. All right, this next topic is very, very close to my heart. It's called the ponytail dilemma. There was a time when I used to have a large tuft of hair, I think. You've seen those covers of those novels, right? With that was me when I was in college. Lee, are you here? Here we go. All right, I guess getting on past single points of failure, like mine, with a ponytail.
All right, hi there, I'm Lee ZAENAL, and I'm gonna rant for a moment about single points failure. This is my daughter. She just turned 11, she just started the 6th grade, and you can see her ponytail there. It even goes outside of the picture frame, and that's me. I'm the single point of failure. So the problem is that my daughter's hair is longer than her arm can reach when she's brushing in the morning, and what that results in is this row of rat's nest hair at the end that, as you can tell, drives me just a wee bit insane. She's also learning the fine art of being able to hold her hair in one hand and keep it smooth up top while taking her other hand and putting it into the ponytail holder. It's a fine art, don't get me wrong. Taken years to perfect it. So one recent morning, she's getting ready for school, and she's going about her morning routine in her normal 11-year-old, la 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 la, I've got all the time in the world. I'm in the project manager mode going, have you brushed your teeth? Have you got your backpack ready? Come on, people, we got things to do. Yes, Mom. No, Mom. I'm brushing my teeth now, Mom. And then we get to the ponytail. So I pause. And I think, should I put the deadline first? I'll jump in, I'll do the ponytail. It will be perfect because I did it. She'll get out the door on time, the carpool won't be late, but I'm still gonna be that single point of failure. Or, do I put her personal skills first? Yeah, she's gonna struggle with it this time, and yeah, I might have to jump in and help her out, but it's gonna get easier. And the next time it'll be easier, and the time after that, until ultimately she joins the ranks of ponytail perfections with me. Well, I opted for number 2, right? That's the right thing to do for her. And because by the time I'd rationalized that life lesson, she was already out the door with a big old grin on her face and a ponytail that Mom did not come back and redo. Yay. I find as parents, it's very easy for us to recognize we have to give these kind of opportunities for our kids to learn and grow and just get better at life. Yeah, they're gonna miss some deadlines. They're probably gonna wake up late an entire week and be late for school because they didn't set their alarm. They might mess up a couple projects because they didn't read the directions all the way through. There might even be a few F's that we've got to get over. But the point is, through all these experiences, they're going to get better and they're going to grow. Odd that when we walk through the door at work, that whole mindset changes. Oh my God, Ralph is the only person who can work on this project. He's supported that application for years and years. He's got to do it, and he'll get it done on time. What do you mean? It's a no-brainer. Jane has got to be the person to do this. She knows who to talk to. She's done it for ages, and she'll get it done just like that. Well, what about poor Fred? Maybe Fred wants to do it. Or maybe Sally wants to learn that new technology. As Scrum Masters, as coaches, as people managers, we need to share the love with everybody. We need to give everybody the opportunity to expand and grow and ultimately become ponytail perfectionists and not be single points of failure. Thank you. I don't know that there could be any questions. I mean, it's obvious. I like that light. It's very good.
I have one. Your daughter doesn't really get up at 5 a.m., does she? Because your slide.
My son does, because high schools here have to be up that early.
Oh.
Wow. Mom has to get up.
Whoa. Thank you. All right, next up we have Pete Mastin. He is going to talk about detecting net neutrality violations using real end user measurements. Real end user measurements. Come on up. Real end user measurements. Please give a big round of applause.
I'm on the clock. Okay. Well, then we just. All right. You got a gong, yeah. So what do I do to go forward? Well, there you go. So while he sets me up, I heard this great story from Woodrow Wilson, or not from him directly, about him. He was asked by a reporter, what do you do to prepare for a 5-minute speech? And he goes, well, I prepare about 2 weeks. And the reporter comes back, what the heck do you do for an hour speech? He goes, well, let's prepare about a day. And he goes, what about a 2-hour speech? He goes, let's go, I'm ready now. So I didn't prepare for 2 weeks. So here we go. So just go forward? All right, there you go. So talking about net neutrality, what gripes me about the conversation, the sort of global conversation we're having about net neutrality is there's an awful lot of ignorance in it, right? We don't actually do any analysis of the data around net neutrality. And most people kind of present it as it's this vague thing in the cloud that we can't really know. And the fact is we can know. And there seems to be like 3 primary different stakeholders here. There's the consumers that fear they're gonna be impacted negatively. They're not gonna get content they want. There's the media enterprises that feel like they're gonna be held, have their feet held to the fire. And then there's the operators of the CDN that feel they're gonna be regulated out of business, right? All of these guys want real data around it. And for a lot of reasons, and so all of them have fear. I like this quote here about fear always springs from ignorance. I was thinking about different quotes to use, and I had these other great quotes that we'll skip over, but I love this guy's mustache here. Have no fear of perfection. So anyway, it has nothing to do with this talk. But so what my company does for a completely different set of reasons is we aggregate a ton of data points around, we measure things. We measure about 2.5 billion measurements a day, specifically around from end users to pieces of infrastructure on the internet. And we take those measurements and we do something entirely commercial with them. But what it has to do with net neutrality is that we can actually see who's being discriminated against, if you will. Who's got good performance, who's got bad performance. So I'm going to try to just jump to the data because 5 minutes goes pretty quick. I had some other stuff to explain how it works, but if anybody has questions, you can ask later. I'll go through this. All right, here we go. So, oops. Go back one. So this is an example of, I've categorized it in sort of major ISPs, rural ISPs, and wireless ISPs. And you can see there's a huge divergence in performance. And what the measurements from these ISPs are being measured is different CDNs. So you have Akamai, Edgecast, Highwinds, Level 3, and Limelight being measured from all of those different ISPs. And as you can see, and this was just on a single day, this was September 9th, you can see there's an enormous difference in performance. And I actually, something I'll come to if I get the full 5 minutes in, look at Google at the 50th percentile versus 75th. It's an enormous difference, right? Google kills it at the 50th percentile, but at 75th percentile, they actually aren't that good, at least on this day. So just briefly, these are the major ISPs and the differences to those specific pieces of infrastructure, in this case CDNs. And as you can see on the bottom, I've circled an example where Time Warner to level 3 was horrific on this day. There were almost 3 times the latency as the other providers. And so if you were on Time Warner on that day and you had, let's say you were watching some video from your favorite sports site, and that sports site happened to be on the level 3 CDN, you were having a terrible performance. Does that mean they're being discriminated against? Probably not. I don't think Time Warner is actually discriminating against anybody. I think it's a matter of who they're buying, who they peer with, for the most part, right? Same thing with the rural ISPs. You can see at the 50th percentile, Google is amazing. At the 75th percentile, they're not so good. And then the difference, again, at the 50th percentile for the wireless ISPs, right? So we all say everything's going mobile. It is going mobile, but the performance of the mobile networks is not as good as the other networks. So real briefly, what we did then, I've got 3 major companies. One is a large video site that you know. One's a large sports site that you might know, and a large is a news site. And the idea here is from each of those ISPs, which ones are seeing the best performance and which ones are seeing the worst performance. And as you can see, this is in latency, and this is, I think, at the 95th percentile. As you can see, the sports site is in a very positive way, they're getting discriminated, for, if you will, in a very positive way. Now, why does that happen? There's a variety of reasons why it might happen, but this is the kind of data the FCC could use in their analysis of the situation to really understand the situation rather than, what they're doing now, which is not really a whole lot. And this is the major ISPs, the global ISPs, the same kind of data at the 95th percentile for the rural ISPs. And then the same, and again, you can see a huge variation in how the news site's being treated from Google, let's say, versus the sports site versus the video site. In fact, throughout this, you'll see the video site is almost the same as the community data, which is the entire 2.5 billion measurements. Lastly, the wireless sites, again, it distributes, there's a huge variation. What does it mean? Well, it means that net neutrality doesn't really actually exist. It never has existed. There's not equal network access. The performance of networks relative to pieces of infrastructure on the internet has always been different. We've always had a tiered internet, and it would really behoove the FCC and all the policymakers to understand that. Lastly, I wanted to show this in Google's behalf because I showed Google having some very bad performance. I just happened to be taking these measurements over the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th, and you can see Google's performance, where the circles are over those 3 days, incredible improvement over a 3-day period. I think I just happened to catch Google when they were actually improving their network, which was really kind of a cool thing. I took a picture of it. I'll save it. Oh. All right, there you go. That's all. So you can go to sedexis.com and you get a free log on and you can look at our community data. It's like I said, it's free. It's a community. We'd love for you to deploy our tag so that you would be then contributing measurements yourself on your website, but there's no requirement to do that. You can just deploy the tag or not deploy the tag, and you can go and look at this data online. I don't know. I thought about that. I just happened to do it at that time. But because it was all in the case of Google, and the news site wasn't, you would have thought the news site would have been much worse than everything else. It really wasn't. So I don't know. That's very difficult to know. But I did find the Google thing around 9/11. I'd love to go talk to somebody at Google and see what they were doing to their network between the 9th and 10th and 11th of September. Anybody from Google here? I'd love to hear from you.
Huh.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, let's see what we got now. Next up, we got Alois, who is going to be talking about monitoring without alerting and why it makes sense.
Hello, everybody. So what we do, I do monitoring for a living, so I build monitoring systems for a living. And about 2 years ago, we came up with this idea. We built monitoring without alerting because everybody we ever talk to complains that their alerts are not working fine. So our idea was we built monitoring completely without any alerts. Zero, nada, no alerts in the whole systems. After giving me strange looks, people usually ask me, why do you want to do this? And the answer is actually pretty simple, because we want to understand why and when our applications are not working. And that's the point where people usually think we are crazy, because this is what alerts are supposed to do for you, right? Tell you when your application is not working. We found actually 3 very good reasons why alerts actually don't do exactly this. The first one is scalability, second one context, and third one dynamics. So alerting and how it works. Every bad alerting starts with really good intentions, like We only have user-facing alerts, so we don't alert on any CPU stuff, and so just when the user's impacted, that's how we start. Then you have a first problem. Oh, component X was failing. So if we only had a metric, metric X for component X, we wouldn't have taken us so much time to figure it out. So let's add this one alert there. Then we have the next problem. This time component Y is failing. If we would only have metric Y, we would have known that this component failed and would have gotten to the root cause much faster. And that's how we go on and on and on, eventually having more alerts than ever before, and we have to dig through all of these alerts, and we haven't built anything better. We can't solve problems any faster, we just have more alerts. So more alerts don't help us to solve any problems. And just to show you some numbers here, this is just the effort it takes to relate two alerts to each other. The green line is if you do it only unidirectionally, alert A is related to B, or if you also want to do it in the other direction. You see the number immediately gets like a lot of work. If at around 10 alerts, if you think like relating two alerts to each other, thinking about it 1 minute, it takes you 1 hour. If you then want to have a couple of alerts and want to bring them in a causal dependency, like alert A relates to B to C, like CPU relates to backend service slowdown relates to end user impact, it's getting even worse. So if you look at this curve here, that's a logarithmic axis, and you should actually know everything that's on a logarithmic axis is per se scary. If it's bent upwards, it's really scary. So more or less, you can't actually do it. If you really have more and more alerts in your system, you need to correlate them. You simply can't make it. We as humans are not built to do this. So the idea behind this was, we said, let's monitor everything and let the machines do this work. They can solve these problems much faster as we can do, like in this example where we run over about 7 million dependencies more or less in no time. That's what we built big data for. The other thing, context. Context matters. So an alert per se has no context. This image here, I can tell you this is a young woman looking backwards or an old woman with a big nose looking forwards. So depending on the context that I give you, you see something different. And that's the same with an alert. These are two infrastructure alerts. They show you just a memory problem. Which one of them is more important? What's the difference? You wouldn't know unless I give you context that the right one transforms into something that's impacting your core application services and eventually also your end users. So context matters. Alerts typically don't come with any context. So what we really have to do, we have to create context. Creating context means we actually have to build a model of our systems rather than just collecting data and showing the data on dashboards. Last but not least, alerts are static. Alerts is violating a certain threshold by 20%. Like we said, a threshold of 300 milliseconds, it's violated, you get an alert notification. You read it 5 minutes later, what's the state at that point in time? What was it before? Is it like really degrading fast or just slightly or a little bit, whatever? So what we do then, we throw away all these alerts and go back to our monitoring systems and look at charts. So whenever we actually want to find out what an alert is about, we go back to charts because we only got the snapshot and not a real idea what's going on. I think actually we can do much better than charts, and we actually tried to build exactly this, like in this case where the only thing I'm doing, I'm collecting all type of information, all anomalies, use that model, relate it to what happens over time, and just put it into a temporal context, see what's happening over time, and just being able to replay whatever happens in my system without sending people alerts, individual alerts, but just showing them a picture what was really going on during a problem in their system, more or less in real time, or when I want to look at it later on. And having something like this is something we believe is much better than getting alerts like emails or whatever kind of alerts, because eventually they themselves don't help you to understand this. And now there's two possibilities. Possibility one, you still think it's much better to have the alerts that you have and this doesn't make any sense. That's fine. Possibility number two, you want to actually try it or see where it really works. Then I invite you to look at us, Ruxit here. We just launched last week. We actually built this system. You can try it for free, and we're happy to get your feedback. Thank you.
Questions? No questions? Thank you. Thank you. All right. This one is extremely interesting. Katie, where are you? Here she comes. Cool. Play, here we go. This is on the impact of technology for people with a spinal cord injury.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm an occupational therapist, also known as an OT. Unfortunately, I am not here to find you a job. Occupational therapists actually work in a variety of settings with many different patient populations. We look at activities of daily living, or ADLs. We focus on things such as bathing, dressing, and mobility within their environment. We also look at upper extremity function and do family training. We do deal with spinal health, but in this case, I'm actually going to be talking about spinal cord injuries. So spinal cord injuries, there are 12,000 spinal cord injuries each year. The majority of those are male, and the average age of a person who experiences a spinal cord injury is 42. Spinal cord injuries are typically divided into two categories, either tetraplegia or quadriplegia, where all four limbs are involved, or paraplegia, where just the lower extremities are involved. Patients can experience loss of sensation, loss of motor control and strength, and below that level of injury, they often have no movement or ability. So, technology, things that you have done to help us, it benefits healthcare workers. We're able to collect massive amounts of data now about spinal cord injuries. And we can collect information about what they're doing. We have easy access to healthcare workers and actually a national database. And with that, scalability certainly does matter. We also have access to online journals, and that allows us to share information and learn more information faster than ever before. There we go. All right, so spinal cord injuries are a life-changing event, but not a life-ending event. Thanks to technology, people like these people here are able to interact with their environment and do things that never before were possible. So they can now communicate like ever before. So the first one is actually showing somebody using their brain waves to navigate through a computer system. Another gentleman is using a sip and puff machine. He's controlling his wheelchair using only his breath. There's a gentleman using a mouth stick, using a regular iPad like you or I would, and the young girl in the corner is actually using just her finger to control a joystick. She's playing a game on a computer. So through things like this, people with a high-level spinal cord injury have limited use of their extremities, but there are now innovative ways to communicate and manipulate their environments. We also have new environmental controls. Simple things through apps that we take for granted allow a person with a spinal cord injury to be more independent within their home environment. They can open windows, close blinds, adjust the temperature and the lights within a room, things that they would have had to rely on somebody else to do for them. So now they can be independent within their home and not rely on somebody else to do what they can do there on their own. Neuroprosthetics are actually something there that are currently being worked on. They use a deep brain stimulator to actually detect neural impulses, and then the neural impulses are translated into the device you see on this person's arm. They send an electrical stimulation, and it actually triggers muscle movement. So this person is able to hold and pick up a can of soda, where before they didn't have the strength to do that. We're also on the forefront of nanotechnology. So nanotechnology is the future. We anticipate with this that people will be able to eventually allow neural impulses to either bridge over the level of their spinal cord injury or actually even eventually repair their spinal cord injury. Technology has also allowed a great amount of support for people with spinal cord injuries who may have limited access to their environment. So people with spinal cord injuries have more opportunities to interact with people in their world around them, even if mobility is difficult. They can talk to others through video chat, through online forums, and they have easier access to their family. They can Skype. They have easy access to their healthcare professionals and also any other services they may need. They also now know what's available in other countries and other communities where before they may have felt isolated. Lastly, I know you all play computer games, I'm sure, and this is actually some wonderful thing. The online community is now enabling spinal cord injured patients to engage in their community, and the only limit is their imagination. I like this picture because it actually depicts somebody. He has a spinal cord injury, but you can't tell. He's playing a video game just like you or I would. Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you. All right, we have one more. And of course, I've got to load it, which is always a scary thought. All right. I don't know which one it is. Magnus. He's coming. Awesome. I hope we have the right one. What are we pulling? This one. That one. Great.
Wow, that guy gets around.
That's awesome. All right, window. Son of a bitch, window. You see it? Full screen. Here we go. Bingo. All right.
Hey everybody, this is Bob Ross guy. I've been seeing him pop up on Twitter through this whole conference so far. Is he in the room? All right, so my name is Magnus HEDEMARK. I'm a systems engineer with Bronto Software, and I gave this talk last week at Triangle Devops on DevOps Year 1. This could be like a 2-hour talk. We're not gonna do this. I'm gonna slice through to like a couple of slides that really resonated with the rest of the crowd. So let me just get this out of my system real quick. We're gonna synergize on DevOps in the cloud. There's not gonna be any big data, any dark data, or any big dark data. I've used up my buzzword quotient, so now we can speak in plain English. All these slides I've got on Dropbox. Let me go back real quick. My Twitter is up here, Magnus919. You can reach out to me through there. I will make sure to retweet the links to these slides because there's a whole lot more. The one thing that really helped a lot for the audience I had last week was one of the things we're doing on the SysEng team is like, we've got a customer base that's growing very quickly. Our infrastructure is growing very quickly. My team's responsible for the infrastructure, but we're not growing anywhere near as quickly as the infrastructure or the customer base. So we've got to figure out how to become better at what we do. We're an awesome team. I mean, the guys I work with in the back, they're great. Shout out to my thought leader, Doug, back there, and the rest of the team. Oh, buzzword, my bad. But we have to keep getting better. So one of the things that we do, is we have this retrospective. In Toyota, they call it a Hansekai. In Japanese culture, it's probably a more negative connotation to Western eyes, centering more on the failure, but that's not how we do it. The way we do it, we borrow a bit from Toyota Production System. We borrow a bit from agile methodologies. We're not really an agile team. We're probably going to be more familiar to lean practitioners. But we take some time out periodically to get together as a team and talk about what have we done well since the last time we've gotten together. What kinds of things are we doing that maybe we could use some improvement? And then really specifically, what can we do to get better at those things? We actually have like hard action items that we record, we commit to, and we revisit at the next retrospective. As far as like how these things are laid out, different practitioners of different systems will have different standards. There's some room to experiment with this and see what works for you and for your team. But really, however you do it, these meetings should result in action items. Like, you're not just coming in to complain about something and walk away, phew, I got that off my chest, I feel better now. No, I found something that is not going so well. What can we do within this team to get better at this? So that's very key. If there are still any XP teams around, and I know there are some, these guys tend to do it weekly. If you see Scrum teams, they tend to do it bi-weekly. If you do it less frequently than about once a month, you're probably losing some of the value because so much time has gone by since the last retrospective. You're not really thinking too much about what happened 5-6 weeks ago, and that wisdom is lost forever. These meetings can run a long time, so you got to be patient. A lot of times when you introduce retrospectives to a business, there's a lot of question coming from business management, like, wow, you're taking up the whole team for like 2 hours? I mean, what's up with that, man? Is that really a wise use of money, of people resources? And yeah, actually it is. But you got to be patient with it. Sometimes they take a couple hours for things to really shake out and for the action items to come out. I think this is probably the most important meeting that a team can have. I mean, like, if you're the kind that skips out on meetings, I heard something before about a talk I wish I didn't miss, that if there's a meeting that doesn't have objectives, it's okay to decline that invitation. This meeting, this is the most important meeting. You decline other meetings to be at this meeting. So I'm not going to use buzzwords, but I might throw down some Japanese. This is where the Kaizen comes from. Kaizen is basically a word that comes out of Toyota Production System. It's a Japanese word. It means continuous improvement. How are they structured? It varies from place to place. The thing that's really worked well for me, devices are put away. Laptops are closed, phones are silenced and put away. I don't want to see any of them on the table except for maybe the one person in the room that's taking notes. It's really important that everybody is in the room, is really engaged. They're plugged into the retrospective. They're serving their own team. They're not doing something else. I started out with revisiting the action items from the last retrospective. How did we do? Did we really do the things that we committed to doing? And did we get the results that we expected? What new things have we been doing since the last retrospective that are going well? Let's do a shout out for that and let's keep doing it. What things aren't going so well and could be going better? And then come up with action items that we can all commit to. It's a short list, maybe 3 to 5 action items. These are the things that we're going to get better at and how we're going to get better at it before the next retrospective. All right, thanks everybody.
Questions? No. Thank you. All right, thank you. Awesome. That actually concludes the lightning talks. Thank you again, everybody, for coming up and presenting and allowing me to ring the gong. It was funny, actually. As people were talking farther down the chain, they would look over to see when I touched the gong, which is always enjoyable to instill fear in people from a little device like that. Again, thank you, OmniTI. Thank you, Surge Conference. Make sure you use your drink tickets. Tomorrow, breakfast is at 8. Be there whether or not you're hungover. I'm speaking at 10. I plan on taking out the other 2 guys that are speaking at 10 tonight, so they might miss their 10 o'clock slot. Just saying. Omer and Brian, wherever you are, come find me later. I'm going to leave you with a very, very random, completely unrelated thing. So I don't have a finger here, right? There's only half a finger here. I have 3 boys. As a result of missing half of a finger, you learn how to adapt. I mean, this isn't like, anything a big deal. But it's on my right hand, and I'm a righty. So I point like this. And one wouldn't think that was a big deal until they have 3 boys who point like this all the time. I've had teachers say, you need to teach your son what that means. And I'm like, I'm missing the finger. They're just doing what I do. So, it's fun to watch, thank God. So Awesome. Listen, have a wonderful time tonight. Please, talk, communicate. These conferences are about all of us actually learning from one another and asking stupid questions and hopefully getting stupid answers and more drunk answers as the night goes on. And I hope to see everybody out and having a drink. And if you see me, come say hello and maybe I'll buy you a drink too. Thank you again, guys.